Starts when I was 2. I don't remember it much, but my parents have told me this multiple times. We lived in this little white house. It was very old. My parents used to always hear me laughing and playing in my room with someone, but there was no one in my room. When they asked who I was talking to, I told them it was a little boy named Omar. They thought it was just an imaginary friend, but now that I think back on it, when I was 3 and 4, I did see someone. He was always very kind to me. I would play Barbies and he would play with me. He would draw me pictures. I would leave my books out for him so he could read while I was at preschool. I would tell him about my days and he would tell me about his. But things started to get really weird once my brother was born, and that is when my parents started to see him too. They believe that this is because he wanted to be the only little boy in the house. Stay tuned for part 2. Here is part 2 of the series of the little boy. When my brother was born, my parents used to sense and see the little boy as well. My mom used to feel his energy sitting in the rocking chair. My brother's mechanical toys used to just start making noise. He started to show up less and less in my room, and every time he would, he kind of scared me. He wasn't himself anymore. He was mad, angry, everything. My parents believe it's just because he wanted to be seen and he was lonely, and now that I had a little brother, I wasn't paying as much attention to the little boy. My mom would wake up to my brother crying in the middle of the night and go check on him, and she would sense something standing next to her. Weeks later, we moved out of that house due to a shooting in our backyard. My old nanny, who lived across the street, told us after we moved out, she would always see something in the window of my room. On August 3rd, 2017, the bodies of a 69-year-old man and a 38-year-old man were found by a neighbor. The two of them seemed to have died while enjoying dinner together. When first investigating, police assumed they must have died of food poisoning. But when the toxicology report came back clear, that theory was thrown out the window. From there, it quickly turned into a homicide case, but who killed these two men and why? Police found no signs of forced entry and had no reason to believe that anyone would want them dead. After some time passed, doctors were finally able to determine what the cause of death was, and it wasn't at all what anyone was thinking. During their dinner together, the 69-year-old man bit off more than he could chew and began choking on a piece of steak. He could have easily been saved by the 38-year-old man, except for the fact that he was too busy dying from a heart attack that was triggered by seeing his lifelong friend slowly choking to death on a piece of steak.
This is why you should always check under your bed. A little kid named Caleb was getting ready for bed and decided to go brush his teeth. He went to the bathroom, brushed his teeth, and told his mom goodnight like usual. Caleb climbed into bed and watched TV until he fell asleep. Caleb then wakes up in the middle of the night screaming for his mom. His mom, startled, jolts into the room and asks Caleb why is he screaming. Caleb says, "Mr. Bones won't let me sleep." His mom says, "Mr. Bones? That was my monster's name when I was your age." She then laughs and says, "Maybe he's here for me and not you." The lights shut off and the door slams. Caleb stops and stares and said, "He told me the same thing." If you guys want to see more videos like this, make sure to like and follow.
Have you ever seen someone with extremely long hair? Well, a man from Yamata Village in Japan saw a woman with very long hair, nearly down to her knees, but things were much stranger than they seemed. He was walking down a narrow street when this woman approached him, and as he walked closer, he realized that she'd been smiling the whole time. But this wasn't a normal, friendly smile. There was something strange about it that made him feel creeped out. But he smiled back anyways because he found her beautiful. This would be his last mistake. In that moment, her hair rose up and stuck to him. Strands of hair hooked onto his clothes. He ran as fast as he could, terrified. He got home quickly, locked the door, but couldn't fall asleep all night. The next morning, he felt a bit better, so he opened the door to try to go to work. But he saw that on the other side, his door was covered in scratches. He had run into Hariona, the long-haired woman from Japanese urban legend whose hair can turn into hooks. She's also known as a smiling woman, as she usually smiles at people from the shadows and also specifically targets men who smile back at her. Comment below what you would do if you ran into her, and follow to see more.
I'm really convinced that there's some entity connected to me. So at first, I've always just thought my house is haunted. I just have a haunted house. That was up until I started having paranormal experiences everywhere I went. So the other night, I slept over at one of my friends' houses. And around the time this happened, I was the only one awake, and I was also the only person in the basement. So I'm laying on the air mattress watching YouTube, whatever. I'm just laying down there chilling watching YouTube, and I start hearing little taps on the ceiling. Almost like somebody was walking but tapping. It was really weird. So I kind of ignored it. I didn't think anything of it. And that was until I looked at the chair that was sitting right next to the air mattress and noticed it had moved and was now facing my bed. Almost like something was sitting in the chair and watching me.
I was laying in bed one night. It was pitch black because we had just moved in, so all you can see is the light creeping underneath the door from the landing. My mom was sleeping in the same room as me, but she was sleeping on the floor. We had just moved in. when all of a sudden the door slowly starts to creep open and an oldish woman appears around the door looking at me and then goes away. Just thought it was a nightmare and turned around really fast and went underneath the covers hoping that I would wake up. When all of a sudden, something that I'll never forget. My mom whispered to me, "Did you see someone just peering around the door?" Safe to say we didn't sleep that night.
I'm going to be telling you a true scary story about why you should always cover your camera on your computer. I work from home, so I use my computer a lot. And one day I was just sitting there responding to emails when all of a sudden the green little dot by the camera came on. It went away right away, so I didn't think much of it. But then it continued to happen every single day. I just thought my computer was glitching, so I took it right to the Apple Store. They cleared my computer of all the bugs, and it seemed perfectly fine. That was until I got a very suspicious thing in the mail. It was literal pictures of myself on my computer. And there was no return address, so I had no idea where they came from. It freaked me out so much that I went to go get a new computer that very same day. But unfortunately, things did not stop after that. They had hacked into everything of mine. I kept getting mail that was just addressed to me with no return address with all my information on it. That is when I realized I had a stalker and he knew exactly where I lived.
Jake was waiting for his mom when he saw a strangely realistic painting, but he made one mistake that would lead to terrifying consequences. During his mom's doctor's appointment, Jake was sitting alone in the hospital waiting room. That's when he saw the painting. It looked so real, almost like a photo. He was promised ice cream if he sat quietly, but he found himself growing more and more curious. He felt like he needed to move closer to the painting, so he got up and walked towards it. The painting was of an old man, but there was something wrong with it. It seemed like the eyes would follow Jake no matter where he'd walk. But soon something even more unbelievable would happen, something no one can explain. The painting, needless to say, made Jake feel creeped out, but he tried not to feel so scared. It was a painting after all. Then Jake leaned in and saw one weird detail. The old man had unusually long fingers and fingernails. A bit later, Jake's mom came out of the doctor's office, but Jake was nowhere to be found. She called him but got no reply. Then she turned around and saw a very realistic painting on the wall. The boy in the painting looked oddly familiar.
On the backside of my house, we had an old tornado shelter. Nobody had ever been in it because when we moved in, the realtor told us not to go down there because there was a lot of mold. But because I was a child who loved to explore things, and I was also not scared to get in trouble, I decided one day that me and my neighbor were going to go down into the tornado shelter. When we finally got the tornado shelter open, my neighbor was way too scared to go down. So I decided to take one for the team and go down there. Because I had a huge imagination as a child, I thought that when I would go down there, I'd find something super cool that would give me superpowers. But instead of finding something super cool, the room was empty. Until I looked into the corner and I saw a little boy sitting there. He was just staring at me. I got so scared, so I ran up the stairs and ran into my house. I told my parents, and they went down there, and he wasn't there. He just vanished.
Story time of how I figured out that my sister was trying to kill me. So me and my sister were like best friends when we were little, but she was a very, very jealous person. So years and years go on, but her jealousy seems to start to grow. So I never really thought about it until I found out that she really wanted me dead. But throughout the years, she would do little things to get me hurt. For example, she pushed me off the top of our treehouse and I ended up breaking my arm. But every time I got hurt, my family would baby me and she would get even more mad. So at this time, we're about 16 years old, and I had to go in her room to get her laundry. And under her laundry, I found her diary. Or journal, or whatever you call it. I was flipping through the pages, I found out some interesting and crazy things. Then one was named The Perfect Murder. What an original name. She had this big, huge dresser in her room. She went into a lot of detail about how she was going to kill me. But it stated that she was going to push the dresser on top of me and jump on it until then scream for help. I'm running out of time, like for part 2. Part 2 of I found out that my sister was trying to kill me. Continuing with the story, after I read what I read in her diary, I decided it was best to keep it to myself. So about a month and a half later, I start to think to myself, and I'm like, okay, maybe she's not actually gonna do it. Yeah, I don't know why, but I was literally not scared that my sister was like about to kill me. So about 2.5 months after I read what I read in her diary, she calls me into her room and in this fakest voice ever goes, "Sissy, why are you being so distant from me?" I just looked at her like she was crazy. Then she goes, "I know you read my diary." At that exact moment, she looked psycho. I don't know what I was thinking, but right after she said that, my reflex was to knock her out. So I knocked her out, then I stomped on her head. I called my mom into the room and read her the diary, or whatever the heck my sister put in there.
Mind you, while I'm reading my mom this diary, she's still knocked out on the floor. My mom then continues to say she's going to put her in a mental hospital. So to this day, my sister's in a mental hospital, and if you're listening to this and you ever get out, please don't kill me. I'm actually living an amazing life right now.
Story time on how my Uber driver tried to kidnap me on my birthday. Okay, y'all, so today's story is my own. And thank you guys for 1 million followers. All right, y'all, let's get into it. Okay, so boom. About 2 years ago in 2019, I lived by myself in my own apartment. At this time, I was at the end of my lease and I was actually moving to another apartment. I had to do everything by myself because I had nobody to help me, so I had to go get a U-Haul truck. This was my first time using Uber because I have my own car. But to get to U-Haul, I had to Uber over there so I could get the truck and then go from apartment to apartment. My first Uber driver bringing me to the U-Haul truck was fine. I had no issues with him and it was pretty normal and fast. So once I was done with the U-Haul truck and I was done moving, I had to return the truck to its location. And then I had to Uber back to my apartment where my car was. Now, this second Uber driver, this is where the issue comes in. Y'all, it was literally crazy. My life was at stake. Life for part two. Part two on how my Uber driver tried to kidnap me on my birthday. Okay, so boom, like I said, I returned my U-Haul truck and I waited for my Uber driver to come pick me up. When my Uber driver came to pick me up, right from the beginning, I knew something was off. Always trust instincts. He was a little weird and off, but I told myself that it's only a 10-minute drive and it will be over soon. So I sat on the back of the car and I just stayed on my phone. You know, minding my business. And then the guy just started talking to me like I guess he was trying to have small talk. But the weird thing is I couldn't understand what he was saying. Yeah, I didn't know what he was saying, but I just thought he wanted to do small talk. So I just was like, oh yeah, yeah, oh, ooh, ah. But then all of a sudden he went off the path of my route. I was like, excuse me, you took the wrong turn. Then he turned back and looked at me and said, I think we're going exactly where we need to be. It gets worse. Like for part three. Part three on how my Uber driver tried to kidnap me on my birthday. Okay, so boom, like I said, he went off the to kidnap me on my birthday. Okay, so boom, like I said, he went off the path of my route. And I said, excuse me, you made the wrong turn. Then he turned around and looked at me and said, I think we're going exactly where we need to be. I still didn't get it and I looked confused and I was just like, just drop me off at this gas station here. And child, he locked the door. At that moment, my heart sank and I knew exactly what was going on. I was being kidnapped on my birthday. He locked all the doors and put child lock so I wouldn't be able to unlock and leave either. I was under pressure, but I knew I had to think fast and get out of this situation. Y'all, he was driving fast, but thank God he wasn't on a highway, so there was red lights. And I live in Miami, so traffic hour is real. I knew that once he stopped at a red light, that would be my only chance to get out this car. So here we go. We stopped at the red light, and I took his head and bashed it into his steering wheel. He didn't see it coming, so I did it pretty easy. Running out of time, like for part four. Part four on how my Uber driver tried to kidnap me on my birthday. Okay, so boom, like I said, he stopped at a red light and I took his head and started bashing it into the wheel. He didn't see it coming, so that's why I was able to overpower him at that moment. As I was bashing his head, I knew that his door was the only way I was able to get out because of the child lock. As I bashed his head, I unlocked the door and I literally sling my whole body to the front of the car and I was literally on top of him. Unlocked the door, opened it, and I just jumped out. He held onto one of my legs, so I ended up falling on the floor on the street. But at this point, everyone was looking and someone was coming to my rescue, so he just closed his door and locked it. And as soon as the light turned green, he bolted. I was bruised all over, like my arm, but mostly my knees. I went inside the gas station and I waited for my friend to come pick me up. Y'all, all this on my birthday ruined my whole day. But I say that to say this: be careful. Thank you guys for 1 mil.
My mom tried to drown this little girl. Story time. When I was about 4 or 5 years old, my family got a pool, so they signed me up for swimming lessons. And I loved everything about the class except for this one girl who we're gonna name Pamela. She was the worst. And every time we had a class, when nobody was looking, she would hold my head underwater for an extremely long time. Now, normally, my dad would take me to my swimming lessons, but this time, my mom ended up taking me. And my mom does not play when it comes to her kids. So during class, Pamela thought nobody was looking, so she started holding me underwater. Again,